Tonight's story takes us somewhere that, at first glance, feels calm, familiar, safe. But the stories surrounding this place claim it's anything but. This episode for Lake Monster Month, we're heading to Lake Champlain. What's up, everyone? I'm Em.
I'm Nick.
And welcome back to the Ominous Archives. Anything new you have for the people that you'd like to share this week?
I'm riding the struggle bus, man.
Yeah.
This is different for us. We're recording at nighttime.
Yes.
And I have been struggling because I have not been responsible, and I've been watching the Flyers in the playoffs on top of going to hockey and doing a late night softball league.
Yeah.
So my sleep is not
non-existent
at the moment. No.
We're juggling over here.
Yeah, on top of trying to do what I can do for the archives.
Yeah.
But it seems like you had a day today.
Yeah, I did have a day. Work is just, work's work every day. But I swear, sometimes working in the restaurant industry, some people they test your patience. And my patience were tested many a times today. I'm so happy to be here in the archives.
Mm-hmm. It's always like a relief.
Yeah, at least we get to wind down.
Doing a topic or covering something that we want to talk about.
Yeah. For our Lake Monster Month, I was tasked with Champ. So the lake that Champ resides in stretches quietly between New York, Vermont, and into Canada. A place that people go to boat, to fish, to take in the view. But for centuries, there have been reports of something else out there, moving beneath the water. Not once, not twice, but over and over again across generations, described by different people who had no reason to be telling the same story. And they called it Champ. And the deeper that you look into this legend, the less it feels like a simple myth, and the more it feels like something that's been seen just often enough to keep people from ever fully dismissing it. But before we even get into the sightings, you need to understand the lake itself, because Lake Champlain isn't just a backdrop in this story, it's part of it. This lake stretches over 120 miles long, with depths reaching around 400 feet in some areas. Those depths aren't smooth or predictable. They're uneven, jagged, carved out by glaciers that retreated more than 10,000 years ago. What they left behind wasn't just a lake, it was a fractured basin. Underwater ridges, sudden drop-offs, trenches that fall away into darkness where sunlight barely reaches. Even today, visibility in parts of the lake drops off with just a few feet. So when people say they saw something beneath the surface, you have to consider how much of that surface is actually unknown.
And then there's the part most people don't think about. Lake Champlain wasn't always a lake. After the last ice age, this region was submerged under the Champlain Sea. The saltwater body connected directly to the Atlantic Ocean. For a period of time, marine animals lived here. There were whales, seals, cold water species that had no business being this far inland. Except, at the time, it wasn't inland. Eventually, the land rose, the connection to the ocean was closed, the salt water turned fresh, and whatever lived here either adapted or died off, or disappeared into a system that we don't fully understand. That history doesn't prove really anything, but it does one thing really well. It removes the idea that this lake is simple. Now let's go on back to the earliest recorded account. We're talking 1609. French explorer Samuel de Champlain documented something on the water. And depending on how you interpret his writing, this is either the first sighting of Champ or the beginning of a misunderstanding that has lasted for over 400 years. Champlain described a large creature, serpent-like, powerful, with a long body and an unusual head. But what's left out is that he wasn't the first to talk about it.
Indigenous tribes in the region, including the Abenaki and Iroquois, already had stories. Stories of a water-dwelling being, sometimes described as a horned serpent, sometimes more like a spirit than an animal. Something that wasn't necessarily hunted, but respected, avoided. And that changes the tone of the story a little, because now it's not just one explorer misidentifying a fish. It's a pattern of belief that existed long before him. Of course, modern historians are quick to offer an explanation, as they always are. Champlain may have seen a sturgeon. And to be fair, that's not a bad guess. Sturgeon are large, prehistoric-looking fish. They can grow over 10 feet long, with armored bodies and strange proportions.
Think of, if you ever watch River Monsters.
Yeah, I think
Jeremy Wade, fish on.
Yeah. I think of when you're scrolling on TikTok and you get to that weird part where it's just deep sea videos. I think of those types of animals.
Yeah, sturgeon are big.
Yeah.
He always was catching sturgeon. I feel like everywhere he went, it's a sturgeon.
It's a sturgeon. In the right conditions, from a distance, they could look unfamiliar enough to spark something bigger. But Champlain's description doesn't read like someone casually identifying a fish. It reads like someone trying to make sense of something that didn't quite fit. As we move into the 1700s and the 1800s, the sightings certainly don't disappear, they multiply. Lake Champlain becomes a major travel and trade route. Ferries cross regularly, fishing increases, more people are on the water than ever before. And with that, of course, comes more reports. Fishermen describe large shapes moving beneath their boats. Travelers talk about something surfacing briefly before just vanishing again. Dark forms, long bodies, movement that doesn't match waves or debris. In 1819, Captain Crum reported seeing a massive black creature in the water. He estimated it at nearly 200 feet long, which sounds impossible, and realistically, probably is. But exaggeration doesn't come from nowhere. People don't usually jump straight to monster without something triggering that reaction. And what stands out isn't just his report. It's that he wasn't alone. By the late 1800s, Champ had become something of a regional phenomenon. Newspapers picked up the story. Headlines described lake monsters being spotted again and again. Of course, tourists came hoping to catch a glimpse. And here's where things get more interesting. Because while the legend was growing publicly, locals often became more reserved, more careful with what they said. When something becomes entertainment, it also becomes easier to dismiss. But the sightings didn't stop.
Moving into the 20th century, we finally get something a little more concrete. Or at least, something that feels like it should be. In 1977, Sandra Mancy captured what is still considered the most famous image of Champ. She was on the water with her family. It was a normal day. There was calm water, nothing unusual. Until she noticed something about 150 feet away. At first, she thought it was a log, which, probably everybody would. And that detail shows up a lot in sightings. Something still, it's harmless, easy to ignore. That is, until it moves. She described it rising slightly, forming what looked like a neck, with a darker mass beneath the surface. It wasn't thrashing, it wasn't aggressive, it was just there. She took a single photograph, and then it disappeared. That image quickly spread, and it's still debated today. It shows a dark, curved shape emerging from the water, strikingly similar to the classic sea serpent imagery, and skeptics say it's a log. Supporters say it's something more, and no one has ever been able to prove either side definitively.
So, what are people actually seeing? The most grounded explanation is simple: misidentification. Lake Champlain is home to large fish, sturgeon, gar, along with other wildlife that can behave in unexpected ways. There's also the otter raft theory, where multiple otters swimming in a line create the illusion of a single long creature. In certain lighting, with distance, with water distortion, your brain fills in the gaps. And for some sightings, that's probably exactly what's happening. But not all of them, because many reports describe something bigger, something moving in ways that don't match those animals. Vertical motion, neck-like shapes, slow, controlled surfacing, followed by complete disappearance. Which leads to the theory people want to believe, and the one science struggles with the most. A surviving prehistoric creature, something like a plesiosaur. Long neck, broad body, flippers, the classic lake monster silhouette. And yes, it does sound like something out of a movie. But the idea sticks around for a reason. Because Lake Champlain was once connected to the ocean. Still, scientifically, this theory has major problems. Plesiosaurs are believed to have gone extinct around 66 million years ago. And for something like that to have survived unnoticed, you'd need more than one. You'd need a population, food sources, a stable breeding group. There's no evidence for that. But there's also no explanation that fully replaces it, which brings us to the most uncomfortable possibility. That whatever people are seeing is something real, just not yet understood. Not ancient in the way that we imagine, not mythical, just undocumented. A species that exists in small numbers lives deep, avoids the surface, and only appears occasionally, just enough to be seen, but not enough to be proven. And if that's the case, then the sightings make a little more sense. Because even today, they still happen. People on boats, people fishing, people who weren't even looking for anything until something broke the surface.
A shape in the distance? Movement where there shouldn't be any? Something just beneath the water? Keeping pace before slipping back down in the darkness? Imagine being out there. There's no wind. There's no waves. Just open water. And then something surfaces. Not like a fish. Not like anything you'd recognize. But something deliberate. Something that feels aware. And then it's gone. No splash. No trace. Just a feeling that for a second, you weren't alone. In 1982, Vermont passed a resolution to protect Champ. Not confirm it, protect it. Officially, it was about preserving local culture and tourism. But it's still a strange decision. Because you don't usually create protections for something that doesn't exist at all. Unless enough people have seen something that it became easier to acknowledge the possibility than to keep just dismissing it entirely.
So, what is Champ? A misidentified animal? A story shaped by time and repetition? Something ancient that somehow survived? Or something we simply haven't discovered yet? There's no clean answer, and maybe there never will be with stories like this. But Lake Champlain is still there, still deep, still dark in places we haven't fully explored. And whatever's been seen out there certainly hasn't stopped being seen.
Thank you for listening to the Ominous Archives. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias. And go check out our store. It is up and running.
Yes.
It's not the, I guess, traditional aspect of it or way
nothing
you would do it.
crazy,
It's an Etsy
but
store. We're doing what we can. with what we got. Also, make sure to go check out our team member Sam's podcast and blog over at Scare Me Sam. If you're in the market for a new thriller or horror book, that's her specialty. Yeah, she does really good at all that stuff. And also remember, whatever you do, don't stare into the water for too long. Because sometimes you may see something staring back. So, as always, stay weird and stay haunted. See ya.
See ya.